Let me take that again. Three, two. Hello, everyone. This is Paul Casey, the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame Zoom educational series. And with us tonight are several people from the Hall of Fame. I'm very excited to have with us Grandmaster Ted Sumner, who just received the Lifetime Achievement Award for all his contributions and achievements in Kenpo. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. And then also our newest inductee, that graces with the smile from Hawaii, Kumu, Michelle Manu. And it's so good to see you, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Paul?
Excellent, excellent. See, always brings a smile. Everybody, by the way, enjoyed your performance of the hula
Thank you.
I got a lot of compliments on that. And I said, well, don't.
Good.
He was the one doing all the dancing. Finally, our first recipient for a very special award from the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame. It was based upon the educational side of and contributions to the martial arts. A lot of that was heavily done because of his writing abilities. He's given a lot to the Kenpo community. So he received the Golden Dragon, and it's a Golden Dragon because it was gold, but it was also because it's the year of the dragon, and that is Mr. Todd Durgan, the founder of Basic Combative Integrated. Hello, Todd. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, Paul. Thank you. It's a pleasure
Absolutely.
to be with all these fine individuals.
Oh, yes. I really want to send this out. This is a new direction for the Hall of Fame. 10 years. It's been around, and now how many years we've been doing the Zoom? I think it's like 5. It's been 5 years of this. And we still get lots of people watching, so it's time to revisit it. And I just want to I want to bring forth not so much how we do things, because as Mr. Parker always used to say, there's different points of view, but why we do these things. And a lot of times, Todd and I have had conversations about, scenarios, techniques, drills, and a lot of times Ed Parker would say ideas. And people would get too caught up in the rigid thinking of the big red book and techniques, and you had to do it a specific way. And that was so counterproductive to his thinking. So tonight, we're going to talk about forward thinking and in the sense of where we vision our Kenpo should be. And I use that word loosely, Kenpo, law of the fist. And we have such distinguished guests here tonight that we're going to see different points of view, but also a lot of experience and things will be part of the discussion. I always use, one of the things I like to do is I reference always the treatises. For example, in leadership, if you don't know, you're going to block with your face is what's going to happen. And that's what happened to me when I first went into Pasadena and I talked to Mr. Parker and Frank, and they had asked me why I was there. And I said, well, I just want to stop blocking with my face. So they said, we would teach you something better than that. So if you look at the art of war, basic all warfare is based upon deception. I had spoken earlier to Grandmaster Sumner about being a police officer. And when he wears his uniform, when he was a police officer, he's now retired, it commanded a certain presence because of society recognizing it. It's sort of the same thing with the martial arts. Certain system styles or disciplines have different, what Mr. Parker would call uniforms. Some people call them gis, others just say a workout outfit. And that can, I guess it can invoke some kind of respect if you're a newbie or you're trying to figure out what the heck's going on. In this setting here, we're very informal because we have confidence in one another, and hopefully we can bring that forth. So Mr. Parker always would say, yes, he would try to focus more on what you know, not what you wear. And so we go on to things like that. One of the other books I also like, in the Book of Five Rings, what is that very famous quote there, Todd, that Mr. Miyamoto Musashi always said in the Book of Five Rings?
Talking about you're going to fight the way you train?
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Michelle knows this. She has her students. She comes from a long history, which is very influential, that touched almost every one of us through the evolution of the martial arts. And it was real life combat. It wasn't sport. It was about life. And Miyamoto is obviously considered the greatest Japanese swordsmanship for his way he trained. I look at other things and other books that I have in here. One of them that I like, one of the quotes, and he trained with Ed Parker in Pasadena and whatnot. And he said, a teacher is never a giver of truth. He is a guide, a pointer to the truth that each student must find for himself. A good teacher is merely a catalyst. Bruce Lee wrote, that's a quote from Bruce. I thought that was really relevant to what we're talking about. The other two I have in here, in the Zen of Kenpo, Mr. Parker was always good about quotes. And, you know, he would always say in our teaching, you know, things about categorizing of what is useful, what is unuseful, and what is useless. Those have been parodies and changed around and whatnot. But he also had in his last book about success. And I'm not going to read that quote, but I'm going to give you what my quote is from it, because my daughter taught me this. She's no longer here in physically, but she inspires me all the time. And I've had great success in my life in the professional world, through my education, through the entertainment world, and the things I've accomplished here. But I was always inspired by a motivation to do better, not be better than somebody else, just to be better than I was before. And I think the greatest gift is to inspire others to their personal greatness. And I think that is one of the qualities of a leader. And I'm going to ask you in a moment about your thoughts of leadership. And finally, here's a good example for those. I'm talking to our viewers here now. I'm talking about each of the individuals that are on today's board comes from a very important background. They have so much to offer, yet they're probably learning at the same time from their students and from the questions that are presented. I remember at the 2024 Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame, we had a demonstration from 3 up-and-coming seniors. One of them was Todd Durgan, the other was Steve Darty, and Marty Zaninovich. And this is one of the reasons why Todd is one of the recipients, because he wrote his first book. Now he's into his second book. And the good thing about it, I believe the question, if I'm wrong, Michelle, I think you posed a question to Todd. Was it to Todd or was it to Marty at the demonstration? You would ask.
I think it was to, yeah, I believe it was to Marty,
Okay.
because he was talking about respect the blade, and then I spoke a little bit about Hawaiian warriors and the respect for the Hawaiian weapons. But I mean, I have lots of questions for Todd as far as the universal pattern, because I found just in that small discussion that there are some similarities to Alohe Kaiwalu's footwork and his clock system. So actually, yeah, a whole different story, but I've actually been inquiring ever since. I remember what my Alohe told me. I've been speaking with my brothers about how he worked with Mr. Parker quietly in the early days. And so I'm still investigating some things, but I'm not surprised that there are some similarities, since these two gentlemen worked quietly several times with each other. So the more I find out, the more I'll be able to come to all of you and let you know what I've uncovered. So it's kind of exciting since I've been with you. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're all seeking. You know, the truth is evasive, you know, because
Amazing.
we think. It's funny, Parker talked about truth, what you know and what you don't know, and things like that. So let's go from around. And as I said, you asked that question, and that was really important because it spurred a few other responses from the others. It doesn't matter if it was directly to Todd or Marty or whatever. It was the fact that a senior was interested in the lessons or the knowledge that was trying to be shared. And so let's go right around there. I'm going to start off with the Grandmaster. Out of respect to you, Ted, you've been a long time and you're very well respected in the community. You've had a lot of practical experience from your background as a martial artist, competing back in the day in the old blood and guts era, where there was no padding and whatnot. And you saw those fighters. I will say this much. The other experience he had is in law enforcement. Before I do that, I want to remind somebody of simply one thing. And I had a conversation this last week with the great Mike Stone. And congratulations, Mr. Stone, on your recognition as one of the greatest black belts in the history, based on Black Belt Magazine. Also, Benny Yukita, Sensei Benny, being recognized as the greatest kickboxer. They like the idea of recognizing others. And I think that's the greatest gift there, is that your vanity, as Ted will probably tell you about in a second, as it's being quoted from the Bible. But the fact is that's irrelevant, what you really think. It's really your accomplishments, and that the others that will see that will enforce that by inspiring you to even better. So, Ted, in your early beginnings, what did you look for in a teacher? What did you look for in leadership? And what do you incorporate in your life as now as a Grandmaster?
Well, there was a sailor, a naval officer, a few years back, and he once said, "Don't ever ask anybody to do anything that you can't do, wouldn't do, or haven't done." That was a pretty fair sailor. His name was John Paul Jones. And when somebody's trying to teach me something, one, their ability to impart the information, and we could go for days on that. But when they're pushing you, training, have they done it? Do they know what it takes? And that's what you're looking for in a teacher, one that gets on the mat with you and does it with you. One of the things that I see that's happening with a lot of places is they are not working with an opponent. And there's three absolutely essential aspects to learning this art. One is extensive interaction with the material. You got to train, you got to practice. Two is extensive interaction with your instructor. And then three is extensive interaction with your fellow students. You got to do it to them, and then you got to let them do it to you. You got to feel it on both sides. You got to push each other right within the bounds of safety to the limits to see where this breaks, where it works and where it doesn't. An instructor is not willing to do that. Should probably get into another line of work. Everybody wants to be a teacher, and Todd and I were talking about this earlier, why there's so many people that want to teach at these events. Everybody wants to teach, but they want it for the recognition. And that goes back to the vanity. And what is vanity? Vanity is the undoing of every great man that's ever lived. Was vanity. If you can't get past that and see for yourself what you are, how are you going to offer it to anybody else? So
good point.
What is that? Then that comes down to truth, doesn't it?
Yes,
and
we talked about the moment of truth. You and I have had it many times in conversation with you and Bob White and Grandmaster Chuck Sullivan. Let's go to Todd real quick. Todd, follow up on what Grandmaster Sumner was talking here about about leadership. What is it you look for? What were you looking for as a young martial artist? And now you've got your own system. What are you trying to help those students come up and understand what you're teaching?
Let me start first. We kind of glossed over the fact that Grandmaster Sumner also has a book out. You want to mention that?
Well, yes, this was about the years I spent undercover in narcotics.
But it's very important. Martial arts or not, it's very important because it has elements of combat and it has elements of mental superiority, mental preparedness, and all of those things that a student would look for in the dojo when they go in, or should be looking for. So what do I want to impart? And, in a nutshell, what Mr. Sumner's saying is that we need to model the way. And we need somebody who is going to do that, who's going to show us by not just tell, but lead by example. I try to do that as much as possible. It's funny that you said that about, the sailor, because I used to tell my students, I won't ever ask you to do something that I won't or can't do myself. Well, that's changed a little bit with my age and the hips that are not exactly fully functioning, but I still try to, embody that lead by example. What did I look for when what was I looking for? Specifically, when I found Mr. Rainey, I was looking for particularly somebody who was going to teach me the information that I found in the Infinite Insights. Because my previous instructor, his name was Randy Borden, and being from Hawaii, Miss Manu, you may know him as a singer. He was a singer, a Hawaiian singer. Anyway, he didn't teach the full system, and so in between him and Mr. Rainey, my current teacher, I had found the Infinite Insights and discovered that there was more to learn. So what was I looking for? I was looking for this. I really kind of didn't know what I was looking for, but I wanted to have somebody who was going to impart with me the information that I thought was required. And this is what happens. A student goes in with some goal. It's not always the same goal that they end up changing over to. And we have to understand as leaders and as teachers, what is their goal and how can we guide them best and help them down the path? Sometimes kicking and screaming, sometimes willingly.
Let's go to Michelle. Hi, Michelle, the newest
Hello.
member of the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame. Welcome. Your first impressions. Why did you go with your instructor?
Oh my gosh. I was dry sponge for sure. Returning back to martial arts after being on stage doing the hula thing in the Midwest as a touring performer, I really felt the need to return to full contact instead of just being on stage. And so when I found my teacher, I was a dry sponge and just wanted to take in as much as I could, and having the flexibility to flow with how much he felt he wanted to share with me. Because I know he was kind of looking like, well, what is she made of? Can she handle it? How much can I give her? He was looking at the way I memorized things and how I moved and how I connected everything and how I dealt with others and how I listened and my reaction time. So all of that, he was the best teacher for me, especially in my early 20s. I mean, I was a fireball, a real a-hole. I had no control over myself. And he was able to take that and focus it. And it's interesting because my style now as a teacher is much different than his. Plus, it's a different era. Plus, I'm a woman. And now I just get really frustrated when I do guide and lead and people just feel lackadaisical about the training, or that I'll always be here, or, well, that's nice. It worked for her. Well, guess what? I'm combat tested. And if at 165.7, it works for me, pay attention. Because even if you're a larger man or a larger woman and you're fighting, why use extra energy that you don't need to use when you can just use biomechanics, right? And placement and timing. So I don't know. It's really interesting to see how it's morphed over the generations. And now we're very concerned with insurance and padding and no headshots when, luckily for me, I think I'm one of the last in that generation that really, received 6 diagnosed concussions and, was actually, put out for a while. Don't remember exactly what happened, but they went out and, breaking every finger. These are not like trophies to say I'm such a tough girl. But, when it does, and if it does happen in real life, which is why we train, I'm not going to be too phased because my nervous system has adjusted to the attack, right? And I think that's what we're missing today. There's so much of the fight, flight, freeze, and now they're spawning, right? So you wait in order to find your moment to actually strike. So I know so my teacher was amazing, the most perfect gentleman for me and teacher. And now I hope to be that for my students. But if not, go find another teacher. I'm also not going to change the way that I do things so that everyone feels comfortable. I'm not a yoga class. And that's just the way, yes, self-development. Yes, absolutely. But it's not through the Hina. It's more through the Ku, the hands-on, the masculine. So yeah, thank you for asking. I see Mr. Sullivan. Is that Mr. Sullivan?
Yep, and we're going to join him in just a second. I want you to would you please repeat what you said? What were the things that he looked at when he was working with you at first?
Oh my gosh, everything. My bad attitude. Yeah, my bad attitude, my peripheral vision, my balance, my timing, how I put the movements together. Was I graceful? Did I telegraph? Did I talk back? Did I not breathe? Did I breathe? When was I releasing my breath? Like he looked at everything. What about my power, my focus? How much mana? When did I release my mana? He looked at everything. And
Well,
he
the
was
reason I
sick of
said
my
that,
mouth. But,
yeah, one of the
Uh-huh.
first lessons I ever had, and it's been reinforced several times. I've had many, many conversations with Mr. Ted Sumner, with Mr. Todd Durgan, especially with Grandmaster Chuck Sullivan. Hello, Chuck. It's good to have you here. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I finally got here.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're here. The first lesson I learned from Frank Trejo is if you're not right here, you don't get in the ring. In other words, everything starts with a thought. So mental preparation is there, and fear has no place in your head. If you have that in your head, you will be destroyed because you're already given your opponent half the battle. He just now has to complete the task. Am I right about that, Ted?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I know that Chuck would say, I'm going to paraphrase. Chuck would say, we don't get hit and we hit first. Am I right, Chuck?
You are right.
Okay. And he was on that. So I think the mental aspect is really one of the things that will control us as a community and that talks about what we impart on the information and the knowledge to the students there. There is a very famous book that I started to allude to with the great Mike Stone, and he wore me out after 9 hours of being interviewing him. He was right. It was called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And you know this book, Michelle, right? Yeah, it's one of
yeah,
it's
Eckhart Tolle, yeah.
yeah, it is one of those impressive kind of things about being in the moment. And it reflects upon, which is what we're always so proud about. We're coming up, we're about the vanity, the instant gratification. Oh, look at all these things I've done. Aren't I great because I did them? Well, no, that's the past. If you want to reflect, great. If that inspires you, fine, or inspires maybe somebody else, great. But if you want to be successful, he envisions it here and he makes it happen now. And I have always done that with when I worked in the entertainment world on stage. Todd's been there with me when I've done that. And you have to learn to shut off the personal side, the fear side. Is that audience going to like me? Or is they not going to like me? And I said, hell. I remember one time I was working with the great Bobby Morris. Bobby was the original drummer for Louis Prima. Jump, Jive, and Wail. He was the one with the drummers. Anyway, he's the guy in that. There was three of them at the time. Buddy Rich, Gene, what's
Rupa.
Gene's last name? What's that?
Rupa.
Yeah, Ruben. And then and Bobby Morris. They were the greats. And he said to me, he goes, Paul, who's paying to see who? I said, I guess they're coming to see what we're doing. He said, they want you. They want to be there. So start with that. Be happy to see them. So let's go on. Chuck, we were talking about leadership and what are the qualities when you first met Ed Parker? Why did you go with Ed Parker? And then why did you stay with him all the years of his life before he passed away?
Why did I go with Ed Parker?
Right.
That was the only game in town.
Well, there was
The word
others.
karate was unknown in the English language completely. Nobody knew what it was. I had no idea. I'd never heard it before. And you heard the story. When I went to school, I had a judo sign, and that's how I got, involved, because they didn't teach judo there any longer, and they I guess they never did, because it was essentially an aikido school, and Ed Parker took it over, and it became a karate school, and I had no idea what it was. I did have an inkling. When I was in the Marine Corps, I had a driver. I was in the post office, and the post office, the postal clerk handles the mail, and the driver handles the truck. The truck comes with a driver from the motor pool. And this kid was Hawaiian, and he told me, he says, if ever a little Chinese guy squats real low and you're gonna fight him, you run like hell. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, I can't tell you. It was that secret. And so how did I get involved? I mean, I knew I wanted to learn a martial art, an Asian martial art, and I got introduced to karate that night by this kid who I thought he was a stone killer, and later on I found out he wasn't really very good at all. But he sure impressed me, and that also taught me that be aware of who you're listening to and how you're listening, because somebody that knows a little bit more about something than you can impress the hell out of you, and it doesn't necessarily make it right. So you have to really be careful. And once I got involved with Ed, I had an opportunity to study with anybody I wanted to. And during the years, I met them all. I met all the gunners, all the good guys, the big names, and I looked at what they had, and I looked at what we had, and what we had was every bit as good as what they had. So why make a change? I never even contemplated making a change. And then when, of course, the infamous split came, I stayed and everybody else left.
You learn from Ed Parker. What was the quality that impressed you the most about Mr. Parker?
What was the what?
The most important quality that impressed you?
There were so many things. I mean, he was just so impressive on so many levels. I don't know if I can pick out one. I mean, his knowledge of what he had was obviously stellar. And he just, at the time when we started, he knew everything about Kenpo. We knew nothing about Kenpo. So naturally, we were impressed with what he knew, the knowledge that he had. And of course, at the time, when I met him, he was 27 years old. And he was in real good shape, real good physical condition. And with his hands, I don't think anybody could have beaten him. I really don't. I mean, he just, when he moved, he shook the room. And that's impressive. I mean, every time you see him and he goes bam and a wall shake, you know you've just seen something. You may not know what it is, but you've seen something.
Well, you've had conversations and interactions with many different teachers, but what was Mr. Parker's demeanor compared to the others?
He was actually a pretty gentle soul.
Was he friendly?
I only saw him pissed off once, and I would not want to have been on the other side of that, being irritated as he was. I would have taken a giant step back. Yeah, and that was of course the time that he had written an article for Black Belt magazine, and they changed everything about the article, and then he started getting phone calls, and they changed. He gave them all the winners of all the events, and they changed it all according to one of their nephews. One of their nephews came, oh no, that wasn't it. So he changed it. So they changed it, and he went down there and he banged on that counter. So he told me, he says, I thought it was going to go away. I really did. And boy, I mean, he was hot. And of course, they apologized one side and down the other. But then again, for about 10 years, you couldn't find the name Ed Parker in the Black Belt magazine.
Well, here's one thing that's really important. Because of his teachings to you, you imparted some of that knowledge over to people like Danny Inosano and also Steve Sanders, who became Steve Muhammad. So there had to be something that was redeeming from them that you retained, that you use in your own training and instruction.
Well, at the beginning, of my instructional period, I tried to emulate Ed as closely as I could. So basically, I just I mocked him, I mimicked him, and I imitated him. I even had the verbiage down with the Hawaiian accent and everything, brother. So,
did you eat poi? That's all I want to know.
I didn't use that, but I stayed myself on the verbiage. But no, he was just such an influence, and we were partners for several years. And when we made the films, those 8mm films that you still see, and then the dojo that we had there, and we did not have not one argument. We had many a discussion, but we never had an argument.
Let's go to Todd. Todd, what inspired you from Mr. Rainey? And you've had a long relationship with. For those that don't know, AC Rainey was Todd Durgan's teacher. Am I right, Todd?
Well, he has been for the last 30 some years. Yeah.
Okay. So there you go.
Prior to him, I was with Randy Borden, who was a very large Hawaiian man and could move like a gazelle. Across a 320-pound man, seemed like he had air hockey things on or something. I never understood how he could move across the floor as quickly as he could and just swack me in the head.
We'll find out from Michelle how they do that. She'll be able to tell us how the Hawaiians can really move quick. Okay.
But Mr. Rainey was, and I didn't find out until many years later that he was actually a very formidable fighter in the Kenpo world. And a lot of people didn't like to fight with him, but Frank Trejo was one of them. And but it wasn't really his fighting as much as it was his he was more, for me anyway, he was more well-rounded, and he had the ability to impart the understanding behind the motion, the principles, and all of the things that I personally wanted to get. In addition to his demeanor, he's a very kind and gentle person, and very giving of his time and his knowledge. So he was very inspiring as far as that goes. I fought with him, and I saw him take people, dismantle people, and I don't have nothing to do with that.
Let's go to Michelle. Michelle, quick question: how do the Hawaiians move like gazelles?
Yeah.
I think it's just honestly core. Our core, from having to paddle in the canoes, to climb trees, to move big boulders, create different heiau temples. I think we're just naturally at our core very strong, and all the water work we do too. So it's that grace, the ability to move like the water and like the wind, and to connect with the elements. This is what we saw. And then during Makahiki, it's a time of peace for 4 months, from like October until like February-ish, and it can kind of move. But, it's a time of peace. And during that time, there's like what I call like the Hawaiian Olympics, but it's the Makahiki Games. And during this time, there's feasting, there's different islands competing against each other, and the best athletes, not just warriors, who showed their long distance running, short distance running, fishing, and even genealogy. That's not physical, but then the warriors, they boxed, and then they did grappling, and they did all sorts of things where I think it just furthered the athleticism and survival, if you will. I mean, they are on islands, right? At different levels of latitude, different types of ground, on the water, prickly, on a cliff, so there's all very windy, very rainy, to very dry. So I think that they've just honed their skills as physical specimens, if you will. And I think that's why they can move pretty gracefully.
Have you ever heard of the term headship and leadership, or versus leadership? Do you understand the two? Headship versus leadership.
No, I've never heard headship. No, I'm sorry.
Have you ever heard of that? Well, I'm giving away if I go to Ted, because we already had this conversation. How about you, Todd? Have you ever heard those two? We've talked to him, I think, at the same time.
I had not before you asked me about it. I mean, I'd heard the term, but I'd never given it much thought, to be honest. And it was something foreign to me.
Well, I was looking for something to discuss, because I was trying to figure out what is leadership. And I'm going to ask everybody their definition or their interpretation. Headship is basically, and Ted, what you want to take the answer on that one, Ted? It's basically an assignment. One's assigned. It's a natural succession. In other words, Ted's the CEO of his corporation, and he immediately appoints or acknowledges somebody. This is a person going to take it. Now, that gives structure to the organization, and people say, okay, that is the wishes of the CEO. However, that doesn't mean that the rest of the group is going to really support that. Okay, that they just said, well, that's what he wants, and then they may choose to stay and so support him or not. Leadership basically is something you earn and earn it through your own efforts, and the community sees it. And it may not be the most popular thing at the time. However, it's for the betterment of others. And let's use tomorrow, July 4th, as a great example of a bunch of colonies come together that didn't want tyranny from England and the king. So what did they do? Bravely, they went forward, and it was maybe not the I would say the safest move going against the king, because they would all lose if they came over here to have him arrested. But leadership is the ones that said, let's make a difference for the betterment. So what is your definition of leadership there, Mr. Sumner?
Hey, well, everybody wants to be the head of everything, right? They want to be the boss. They want to be the one that I had one student, I asked him, what is it you're after? You said you're building this organization, and finally, out of frustration, he says, I want my students to respect me as much as I respected you. Well, you can't force that, buddy. Leadership is the one they look to when they got to get the job done and they don't know how to do it. They look to the leader. What do we do?
I think it goes back to that
He
first
may not
question.
be the head of the whole thing, but he is the leader.
True.
You learn real quick in combat when the shooting starts and they look around, usually for one guy, what's he doing? And they do what he does. A lot of times the leader, and you're talking about our founding fathers that there was the one battle in the South, and they had sent the one general down there to take over for Nathaniel Greene. And when the battle started, he was on his horse heading out of there, and Greene had to take command. So he was the head of the army, but he didn't lead it.
I think one of the things about what a leader does is he listens. He listens and takes guidance. It may not be the most popular decision, but at least he will have made sure that he had listened to the people that are following him, because they have to have faith and confidence in his decision. And I would think, I'm going to go back to Michelle. I think, Michelle, when I first asked you and you recited all these things that your instructor was looking at you, it all basically dealt with your mental capacity. Did you have that? Because that's the number one thing. You cannot have fear. You cannot have fear in your head. And it's hard to teach somebody to reject fear and to have the strength. Am I right about that?
Well, I don't know. I think we all have fear of certain things. It's as we walk in faith that we're going to be our best man or woman at any second. But I think it's transmuting that fear, right? Understanding we feel something here, and to breathe and to master ourselves through it, and to actually use that same energy, but in a different way. But no, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of it is, of course, it's skill set. Not everyone likes me. We know this, but they have respect for my skill set. And as far as my students, I think it depends on leadership. And if it's not martial and not system focused or culturally focused, then I think that you have more of a latitude to be a leader. And that can look different. Corporate America, another meetup group, maybe a book club. These things look different than what we do. We speak of every single system, every single family lineage. It doesn't matter, of honor, respect, integrity, focus. And these have become buzzwords for us, for some out there that know the speak, but they actually don't walk it. So our job as leaders are to be that example. And when behind closed doors in these small conversations, when no one's looking, our integrity must be intact. Are we the same individual when we're by ourselves than when we're with it? Because guess what? I think our mana actually reverberates that. I think if we are two-faced and we all have duality, but if we have these literal dualities of where we're literally someone else when no one is around, I think others can kind of feel that too, that disingenuine presentation of oneself. So for me, because I'm not a book club and I'm not a meetup group, and I am the only female teaching Lua in the public, unfortunately, I don't listen to my students. I have to be led by what was culturally proper and how I feel I need to evolve us and move us forward here under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of eyes sometimes. And so if they don't understand, they can leave. But I do ask them to trust me and to move with me and to know that until I die, this is a living and breathing thing that they're involved with. I cannot set one specific like structural curricula for up through, warrior levels all the way up through 12 and beyond, which is well into like, black belt 5 and stuff, that high. When they become actually Kumu on their own, in their own right, they have to trust in, things are shifting constantly. So they have to trust in their leader, me, or they can go find another Kumu, and that's fine, yeah. Sorry to go on and on, but
No, that's all
how
right.
I see
I'm going to go to
it.
Todd in a second because I've gone to you and Ted. One of the things is also how you were raised. Protocols say be kind, be nice. I mean, I've been with people, that don't give a damn about that. They're about as subtle
True.
as a piece of broken glass cutting your neck. They don't care. They're just going to tell you. And that, so I don't think two-faced is the key. I think there is the image of what is the right protocol versus what is appropriate in the response. And Ted,
Absolutely.
Ted, you had a military background, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I know Todd did. Todd, you're gonna when you were there in the military, there was a certain protocol that you had to live and learn by. Am I right?
Absolutely.
And
But
why don't
there's
you
a reason.
share at least one lesson that you got out of it that changed your mindset around?
So there's a reason for those protocols in the military, though, and that is because when you go to war, when you're in a situation, just like Mr. Sumner has been on the police force, when you get into a situation, you have to be able to rely 100% on the guy next to you, the guy behind you, and the guy in front of you. You also have to be 100% focused on them being able to rely on you. Nobody is greater than the next guy over. Everybody is part of that team. Everybody is part of that unit, and you have to work as a unit. That's a completely different thing than individual leadership in a dojo or I'm sorry, I don't know what you call your place of training, Miss Manu. But
Oh,
what is it?
it's a palua.
Okay,
Yeah, pa.
that.
PA. Yeah.
That. So, but in the military, you are the individualism is pretty much they tried to just get rid of that because they can't afford to have individuals, not from a private first class all the way to a command sergeant major or the general of the army. You can't have individual because you have to work as a unit. All of
You have to.
unit. So when you're I don't know if I answered your question, when you're teaching as a leader in a school, in a dojo, or even at a function where you have seminars going on, you have a lot of people that are looking up to you for your knowledge, experience, and understanding, but also they're looking to you to see how you interact with everybody, not just the next guy down your belt level, but the guy at the very bottom. One of the things that I like to do when I go to place, I was at a belt test in Seattle the other day. I tried to, when I would see somebody that I recognize from, and I've taught at this place for years and years and years. And I've seen some of these guys, they were white belts years ago, and I don't know what rank they are now, but I'd see them they were in the audience to watch a belt test. And I would get out from behind the table and I'd go over and shake their hand and say, hey, how you doing? It's good to see you. Because I want them to know that I remember who they are. It's important to them. It's important to us as individuals because we are individuals. And first and foremost, we talked about vanity in the beginning. We talked about people being vain. If you read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, you understand how we are at our very core, we are always about us. We can try to focus and change that, but at our core, we are always about us. We are about self preservation and survival.
Mm-hmm.
In the military, you go through this training so that yes, you're about you, but you're also about the group. You're about the entity and the unit that you're a part of. So if we can, as leaders and as headships, whatever you want to call it, if we can make or help the people below us feel as important or as relevant as we feel ourselves, that's a huge thing. I've heard stories, unfortunately, Mr. Sullivan's gone, but I've heard stories about Mr. Parker that really pissed me off that I never got to meet him because of my military experience. But because I've heard where he would walk over to somebody and, you know, they might be the lowest rank in the room, and he would talk to them cordially, introduce himself as Ed, and have a conversation with them, and make them feel, you know, just absolutely overwhelmed with his kindness and his, you know, this is Ed Parker. And I don't know, maybe Mr. Tracy did it. I don't know, but you know, that to me, that is an example to me that says, you know what, I should do that. If I want to be a leader, and I want people, I don't necessarily want people following me, because my path is winding and unending, but that was a joke. But if we want to set the example, you know, if we want to have a good example, we have to be an example. So,
You know, there's I'm going to go to Ted in 2 seconds after I end this. There's two things I learned. There's two things I'll get to Ted on this for a second. There's an old saying my dad used to tell me. He says, people want you to do well. They just don't want you to do better than them.
right.
And I always live by that. I said, you know, and it's really sad when you think about that. And by the way, what I'm going to say is that the kindness shows confidence in your own being. The 3 phrases I used to always use, and I've spoken this to you before, Todd, is that, you know, it's why is it so hard to say thank you or congratulations, or the one men hate to say is I'm sorry. Okay, it's true.
Well, don't pigeonhole men in that.
Well, it's hard. I'm saying in generalities, because the problem is that you see there's a false sense of importance. And I'm seeing this on the social media pages, especially from lower ranks that are saying, why do all the seniors dismiss us and don't have any interest in what we have to say? That sounds to me that you're not very confident in yourself. Why don't you put out a question that might be interesting for everyone to learn from? So what is your thoughts on that, Ted?
Well, I just wanted to go back for a moment to what Todd had said about Ed Parker when I met him several times. Was in a couple demonstrations with him and so forth. When I was just a teenage kid at the time, but when he talked to me, he focused his attention on me, just laser focused, and made me feel like what I had to say was the most important thing in the world to him right at that moment.
Mhm.
You know, and very few people have ever been able to do that. It was a gift, but and I don't think it was disingenuous. I think he actually cared about, you know, people who were students in his art.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sorry you never got a chance to meet him. He was an incredible guy.
Yeah, he's an amazing man. I was with him for 12 years. I will say part of it is his Hawaiian heritage. The Hawaiians will offer you full trust until you betray them. And you do that, you're okay? That's the truth. Why are you laughing, Michelle? It's true.
Because it's
You know,
true.
The thing is,
unfortunately.
I remember one time I was with my father. My father was, as I got older, he got smarter. And he taught me one thing about it. Says, people never really remember what you do. They just want to remember how they felt being with you. And that's the commonality of it. So everybody that had any kind of interaction with Ed Parker on even just a one time to a continuous lifetime, he's a human being. But he did take the interest, and he was always educating with some kind of lesson in when I was around him in the classroom, or I was in his office, or I was in a car where I was captivated and captured. I was next to Frank. That was fun. Frank was scared out of his wits. And it's, you can see when somebody's really confident, like Michelle. She comes across very genuine, very strong, but she listens. I talked to Todd. Todd will sit back and he will listen to me, and he puts up with my, you know, gibberish a little bit, and then he'll go right to the point. And whenever I talk to you, sir, you know, between the other two, Ted will take the moment and he'll take my call. That is one of the greatest gifts I ever had, is to have individuals like yourself that I can call. And I want to ask you questions so that maybe we can improve our community, because we're all in this together, whether we like it or not. And if we can invoke confidence and as well as kindness, we may get further ahead. The ego thing of social media is to our detriment at times. Thoughts, Todd?
It's without consequence. That's the problem. The majority of the things that you read are without consequence. Fear was brought up earlier. The thing about fear is that fear stops us as human beings from doing stupid stuff in our lives to break ourselves or whatever. When we're kids, we learn how to respect fear, right? Or we learn how to be deathly afraid. If you have a helicopter parent, you learn how to be deathly afraid. If you're outside until 8 o'clock at night and you're God knows doing what or where, and you come home because the lights went out and you know that you better be home in about 5 minutes or you're gonna get your butt kicked. Okay. You learned throughout the day how to be afraid of certain things because why? You got hurt. You did stupid stuff and you've started to understand what pain is and what fear is. And so as you grow, fear also creates and helps us gain a greater respect for things, right? For getting your ass kicked, so on and so forth. And so, a lot of the things that we see on social media, unfortunately, are done without fear of retribution or fear of any form of accountability, physical or otherwise.
Very true. Very
Parker
true.
says in his book, The Zen of Kenpo, meaningful quotes, just because you mentioned fear. He says, fear no man, but respect all. Why would you fear somebody, Michelle?
I don't fear anyone, so I'm probably not the right person to ask
Okay.
that question.
Okay,
Sorry.
Ted, that's all right. No, why would you
my biological father is gone. That was probably my number one fear. He prepared me well for my training, and my Elohe is gone too. So there's nothing I fear.
I think the answer for you is the reason I don't fear is I have the utmost confidence in who I am and what I'm at my abilities to do what I need to do. Okay. And that was, I think Ted will go off this. This will go right to you in a second. In your training as a police officer, I've had conversations with Dr. Chappelle. And one of the things that he was talking about is that when he tells his cadets, when they make a stop, he says, be prepared to kill everybody in the car because they may want to kill you. It's easier to de-escalate than all of a sudden, oh my God, I got caught off guard and I'm dead in the onion fields out in Los Angeles. Okay.
Yeah.
Or some, and we're seeing police officers now are targets because why? They wear the uniform. So the fact that we used to have respect for police officers is at a disadvantage for these men. So I would think the same thing goes true with you, Todd. When you wear your uniform in the room, people know who you are. When you're walking down the street, they don't know who the hell you are.
Nope.
So that acknowledgement of what you do for a living is not who you are, but what you do.
Well, that's why, as a police officer, making off-duty arrests is discouraged because you're in plain clothes and it can get out of hand real fast. I can attest to this. I've been there. Same thing as a plainclothes officer. They prefer to have uniformed officers making the arrests, if at all possible. That's why detectives don't go out and make the arrest themselves without uniforms with them. There's that authority there. And we one night, my partner and I were trying to break something up, crowd formed, and they rushed us. We were in plain clothes, where they wouldn't do that if there was uniform. 2 uniforms showed up and they backed off. You guys weren't near as tough as we were, but they projected that authority. Now then, there are certain guys, I don't know what Jack Autry comes to mind. He doesn't need a gi or a belt. That guy projects authority, man. he looks dangerous.
He's a
So,
really
and
nice
there's-
man too.
And
Very
he's a nice man. But nobody would willingly pick a fight with him. It just isn't a smart thing to do.
So I think it all relates back to the intent of having confidence. It's when we have doubt, and then doubt becomes fear because we're thinking, what are the repercussions on this? Like my little guy, he's 9 years old. Got to tell you this. 2 weeks ago, he competed at the USA World Championships, and he's into jiu-jitsu with Gracie's system. And they had about 40 kids competing against each other, and they had two divisions. They had mostly no gi and then some with gi. Well, all the guys with gi said, "Now we're going to go into the in a no gi." So George says, "Okay." He gets into it and goes from 40 down to 20, down to 10, whatever. And he's doing his business. And proud dad here, I'm trying to coach him. I'm trying to say, "You got to do this, George. You got to do that, George. And don't give up. If you want to rest, don't sit up, lay down on him, use your grab, these kind of things, right?" And he looks at me, goes, "Dad, I got this." I go, "What?" My 9-year-old is telling me he's got this. I said, "Are you sure?" "No, I got this." And sure in hell, Ted, he had it. I was just so fearful, not in his instance for scared. I just didn't want him to fail. And I should have realized I should have had more confidence in his abilities. And that would have been better for me. So anyway, I know that Mr. Sullivan is still in there. We'll wrap this up in just a minute. I want to make sure. Are you still there, Chuck?
I'm here, but you can't hear me.
I can hear you.
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Oh, all right.
I asked you to start your video.
I've had nothing but problems with this
Hey,
thing
now we
since
got
it
it all. We
started.
got the whole,
It's okay. We're good. We're
we got the
good.
whole truck now.
Yeah, just turn. If you can turn that camera to the other side,
Oh, you froze.
horizontal.
You froze.
They're still there, Chuck?
I'm still here.
Okay, if you can turn your camera, it's called landscape. Turn it horizontal. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of stuck. Otherwise, I got to go like this. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay,
That's
we're going to
fine.
wrap this up because tomorrow's a holiday. And I got to tell you, first and foremost, out of all the folks that are here, I asked you personally to come on because I envision you as our leaders. Okay, right now, you are the leaders of our martial arts community through your accomplishments, and that has been recognized by your peers. And I think that's the greatest recognition, is having others say, "You earned this. You worked for it. You sweated. You were focused. You don't need our approval. Okay, you did it." And Michelle, you did it. And you look at Todd, he's worked so hard to try to get this information out. And then I have my two grandmasters here, and you guys are the rocks. You're sort of like the lighthouses out there in the storm of Kenpo that's going all over the place, that are going into each other, capsizing, trying to take each other out, try to better one another because of stupid things regarding image rather than substance. And if people would more or less look toward your leadership, what you have done, Chuck, all your life, and you are a gift to the Kenpo community, and so are you, Mr. Sumner. You have guided so many people in your system and outside of that system as a great teacher, and not by everything you say, Ted, but everything that you listen to and then you answer. Here's the guys that go like this, and you're one of the guys that listens and gives you the answer, and that's what Chuck does. I can't tell how many times I've called Mr. Sullivan. I drive him crazy. I do. I don't call him before 11 o'clock. Am I right? Don't call.
That's right.
Don't call before 11. Okay, and that's it. So, and don't worry, Michelle, I won't beat you up with phone calls like that. But when it comes to these things,
Paul, I want to just, can I read something from the movie Glass? Because it reminds
absolutely.
me of George. Okay, so this is George, and I think it's for all of us, regardless of what age. It's from Elijah Prince. That's the character. And so it's Samuel Jackson's character. And he says, "I believe that if everyone sees what just a few people become when they wholly embrace their gifts, others will awaken. Belief in oneself is contagious. We give each other permission to be superheroes. We will never awaken otherwise." So I think this is George. And I think that we forget this because we're older. Because my grandsons will be 9 next month. I have twin grandsons. And so they're the same age as George. And they do have this undying, unwavering belief in what they can and cannot do. And as they investigate their world, they learn more about themselves. And I think we lose that as we get a little bit older. So for us to, as leaders, stay curious and stay inviting and keep developing yourself. And therefore, you're more of a leader for your people. So that's what I think.
Thank you.
And going right along with your thought there is being able to see those qualities in other people. And part of being a leader is then not just requesting, but demanding that they fulfill their potential. I'll go back to fear. When I was 18, I just won my black belt. I think it was a third or fourth tournament I was fighting in. Got to the semifinals, and the guy I was fighting was probably 32, 33, well-developed grown man. And I just gotten my growth of the 2 years before. And Al Tracy looked at me and said, "What's the matter? Are you afraid?" And I said, "Yeah." "No." He says, "You're better than he is." I said, "What?" "That guy's tough. That guy's mean." He said, "Yeah, but you're a better martial artist than he is. Just go in and fight your fight." Came out, I lost. But my instructor standing there smiling. I said, "What? I lost." He said, "Yeah, but you cut his heart out. That guy doesn't want to fight you anymore." That I left everything out there. That was what it was about. That was all he wanted from me. And that's what we as leaders and instructors have to do and should do.
Yes. Todd, your thoughts?
I agree. Yeah. I gave my spiel about being a leader. See, the great thing about Ted's story is he helped Mr. Sumner put his fear aside and get out there and do it. And like I was saying, when we're growing up, that's where we learn, and we learn respect for fear, for our own fear.
Yeah.
We also, though, learn at those times and during that time, when is the time to allow that fear to grab us and teach us, and keep us away, and when is it time to say, you know what, step aside, I got to do this anyway, and overcome that fear and do it.
I'm going to end with a couple of final thoughts here first, but how do we help the younger martial artists to understand that the journey there's a lot more to that journey? They're thinking that they're at the point right now where they need that. It's sort of like the young buck that says, I'm ready to run out and run. And the older said, no, just we'll walk. Okay. How do we convince, we're not convince. Guide is the better word. You're never going to convince anybody to do something until they either need to do it or they felt they have to do it. And that may be because of whatever cause or whatever repercussion or whatever goal, whatever need they have. Chuck, 92 years in this world and another 20 more to go. I guarantee we're going to be around for a while. We love you, Chuck. You always have. One thing I will say this in front of everybody here, Mr. Sullivan will give you the most direct, honest, and positive response to a question. I mean, he won't tell you something to do something. I mean, if you're going to do this, you're going to get killed. Don't do that. He will say that to you, but he will try to guide you in a way of a positive response rather than because I said it. He won't do that. There's certain teachers that rule by fear or because I am the guy, and which is more the headship rather than leadership. And I think Michelle understands that. She listens, and she either earns their respect or she'll demand their respect. And if there's either one of those not going to exist, there's the door. Goodbye. And I know that in all the conversations, I've had so many conversations with Todd Durgan. I'm telling you, Todd is a great teacher. He can break down something and he takes it logically and simplistically, and he tries to walk you through the process. And that's why I learned to speak Durganisms out of this book. And I tell you, the guy is on the right path. And then again, every time, how many conversations have we had, Ted, with you and me and Bob White and Chuck's? I mean, we've had what, at least 25 or more,
Yeah.
at least.
At least.
And every time he comes to the conversation with a positive message. And if you don't get it, you will eventually get it. And then he won't sit there and go, you see, I told you so. He'll say, okay, you're in the right direction now. Why don't you move? So let's go to you, Mr. Sullivan. What is it that we need to look at? What's most important in our journey while we're here to be good leaders, to help the next group of seniors that will come up, just like you're helping us and those that are listening? Maybe you can give us some insightfulness.
Well, almost everything I learned about the martial arts, I learned from my students, from listening to them, from their experiences. And I've learned more from my students, I'm sure, than they've learned from me. That's about all I can say about that.
Final thoughts, Ted.
I'm still thinking about what Chuck just said. That's very profound. I always learn something from my students.
Todd, final thoughts?
Yeah. So being a leader is challenging. I think that acknowledging yourself as a leader is a double-edged sword. Allowing yourself to listen to the students and learn those lessons that Mr. Sullivan's talking about, I can't agree more. Example, I have a black belt. He's lives in Oahu. He's one of my students. Years ago, we were talking about the universal pattern, and he referenced the transverse coronal and sagittal planes and said, oh, it's kind of like the medical field with the death. And guess what? That's where I got that from. It was that discussion. And so then I correlated that with the universal pattern, and I was off to the next race. So yeah, listen to the students. Young guys, how are you going to help them? I don't know. Listen to them, give them good feedback, but they have to come to you first. They have to understand that they can come to you. Many of the stories that I've heard about Mr. Parker, for example, guys would say, oh yeah, I was really nervous to meet him. And then, when I met him, it was like Ted, like Mr. Sumner said, he was laser focused on me, and I was the only one in the room. I was the only one in the world for 5 minutes. I'm like, well, that's if we want to be leaders, we need to give them that experience and help them understand that, that they can come to us with questions. Just don't be a dork.
Just don't be a dork.
Be a dork. That's the
Don't be a dork.
That's our takeaway for
Read a
the day.
t-shirt.
Michelle,
Don't be a dork. I like that, Todd.
Michelle, final thoughts.
I don't know. I mean, I think the experience of becoming a headship or a leader or into leadership is very personal. And as we focus on others and we consider what others have to say, we also have to allow ourselves to not get lost in the servantship, right? Where we are no longer caring for ourselves. I was at an event earlier this year back home where I hadn't seen some of my friends of a different art in a year, but yet majority of them all gained at least 30 pounds in that last year and have let their health go. And I think as we start to really embrace what others have to say and want to lead them well, we also have to consider ourselves too, especially as we start getting the high mileage. I mean, we have, all four of you are grandmasters, right? I mean, you have to know our bodies change. I'm going to be 50 and I have to change my ways. And that means I can't be available as much as I used to be for my students, nor will I take some of the kicks anymore just for fun. Of course, I know I can take them, but why? So it becomes about longevity and our own wellness and our own evolution from maybe the really hard stuff into maybe half hard, half soft, or maybe more into the intellect and not so much into the actual physicality anymore. So I think it's also important as we are is as leaders and as we're moving more into leadership, to not forget ourselves either. There is no trophy for becoming or staying codependent and basing our value on how well our students are doing. That's their choice. We also have a choice to continue to uphold our responsibility to ourselves too. So just closing thought, encouraging you to also take care of yourself, because if you're not well and you can't move, then you can't demonstrate and you won't be here for much longer. So try longevity. That's all I'm trying to say to us.
I have 3 comments from 3 different people. The best one was, when it stops being fun, I'm not going to do it anymore. Who is that, Mr.
So that's
Sullivan?
once a year.
That's right.
That's
That's
Mr.
right.
Sullivan.
I've had a ball for 65 years, and it continues on.
The other one was that a leader is not a popularity contest. It is a person that takes the position for the benefit of all, but specifically, he also thinks of, or she thinks of, the minority. And that's what this country's principles were based on. We're a republic for a reason. Finally, Frank Trejo, at one time, when it was time to kick me out of the nest, so to speak, this was about 2 years before he died. I had come to pick him up, and I said, "Hey, you're going to go with me." We went to Mr. Parker's gravesite and spent some time there. And he opened up, and I heard things that I never knew. And I knew this man almost for 40 years. I never knew all these things and how close he was to Ed Parker. And he still called him Mr. Parker as he was standing, or he was sitting in his wheelchair at his gravesite. Mr. Parker this, Mr. Parker that. He started crying. And, when you see somebody that you love and respect show that kind of emotion, I think of greater respect for him because of the strength it took for him to reveal himself. And when we got done, we were driving back, and we were getting ready to come down to, I think at Bob White's. This was sometime later, Bob White's elevation. And I think you were there, Chuck, right? You were there at that.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And I said to Frank, I said, the night before, I went to a dinner for the IKKA with Darlene and her husband, Nalu, and Joe Dimick. Joe Dimick, I love Joe Dimick. He was a great guy. And he, again, you guys are from that same cloth. Ted Sumner, Chuck Sullivan. I can see you're of the new cloth, Michelle, and especially Todd. He goes to me, I said, we're going to go to this event. He goes, well, he says that you should go. And I said, well, no, Frank, I can bring you. I was used to dealing with a wheelchair and helping my daughter and put her in there. He goes, no. It's time for you to walk your own path, Paul. I have greatest faith in you, and it's time for you to do that. And I think the leader sometimes has to say, I'm going to walk a path that has not been well worn. It's not the easy path. I'm just going to go along that because everybody did that. Sometimes you have to cut a path in a direction like Ed Parker did, like Ted Sumner has done, like Chuck Sullivan has done, like a new path that Todd has embarked on with the PKI. And the beautiful thing, the history of our martial arts from Hawaii is through the teachings and the knowledge of Michelle. So when you have that, we all are the same, yet we're all different, but we all come to our luau and we share. And that's really the important thing. So I want to say thank you very much, Grandmaster Ted Sumner. I really appreciate taking time to be here tonight. I hope you have a wonderful holiday. Todd, it's always good to talk to you. I promise you I won't call you in the morning. Okay.
Yeah,
I love you.
I want to.
Thank you. Michelle, you're always a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much for sharing some of your valuable time. And I'm glad that people are getting to see you and understand of what you have to offer, and which is wonderful. Finally, Grandmaster Sullivan, I'll be seeing you in about a week, and it is always a privilege to be around you. You're, like I said, it's always a positive time with you, and I love you.
We always have a good time.
You're a great man, and just so you know that.
Agreed.
All right, no further ado.
Hell on me.
All right, no further ado, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. My name is Paul Casey. Let's thank Ted Sumner, Todd Durgan, Michelle Manu, and Chuck Sullivan on behalf of the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame. We hope to see you in our next Zoom meeting in the near future. Have a safe holiday, and God bless you. Sully.
Happy Independence Day.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, sir.
Uh-huh.
Mahalo.